Good early afternoon, early evening, late afternoon, however you want to play it. Franklin Township. Welcome to the July 21st, 2021 edition of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour. I am Bill Bowman, the co-publisher and editor of the Franklin Reporter.
And I am PJ Parker, also co-publisher, but the advertising director of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate. And we welcome you here tonight. Bill, why don't you tell people how they can subscribe to the Franklin Reporter and Advocate?
Oh, sure. You want to subscribe to the Franklin Reporter and Advocate? We would love you to do that. Support independent journalism, the only independent local journalism that's being produced right now in Franklin Township. We don't report to anybody else except for you guys. We have no corporate overlords. And you can do that by just going to franklinreporter.com, and a little box will pop up, and it'll give you the directions on how to do it. It's based on your email address, and you'll be prompted to subscribe. It's only $37 a year. That's the best deal in town. Best deal in town.
Which is actually 10 cents a day.
About, yeah. And like I said, we are the only independent news source in town. So today we are going to be joined by Rabbi Eli Garfinkel, who is the spiritual leader of Temple Beth. That's Hamilton? Is that still Hamilton? I guess that's still Hamilton Street, right?
It's Amwell. I think it is. It's Amwell at that point, but it's Amwell/Hamilton.
Yeah, Amwell/Hamilton.
Right.
Rabbi Garfinkel has been a very out front leader in Franklin Township over the past number of years. I believe he's celebrating his 15th year.
Wow.
as the head of Temple Beth, and he's written a book. In fact, I can even bring it up for us.
It's hard to see the title. It's called the JPS, Jewish Heritage Torah Commentary. And
right.
JPS meaning Jewish Publication Society.
Right.
But it's a treaty, as it were, about the Torah. And Rabbi Garfinkel will explain exactly what that's all about.
We'll get to the skinny on him, but it's basically it's 4 essays on each portion. I think he said there were 54 portions of the Torah. From what I understand, it's a very big book, and it's been getting rave reviews from folks in that world. So it's something that people are going to want to pay attention to. And I understand even people who are not Jewish are getting some benefit out of reading it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not waste any more time. Let's bring the rabbi in. Welcome, Rabbi Garfinkel.
Welcome. It's
Thank
an
you for having me.
honor. Thank you.
So Rabbi,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I was about to say. So we were just telling our Franklin Township community that you had written this book and that it is available, and you're going to tell them how they can avail themselves of it. But before we got started, there are some very glowing commentaries about this Torah commentary, and I'd like to read 2 of them. This expansive, accessible, masterful, and truly inspiring volume is certain to make the study of Torah personally relevant and meaningful to a wide audience. And a second quote is, "It is readable, it's relevant, every page is brimming with scholarship, creativity, inspiration, and love. A must-have for anyone looking to deepen their engagement with Jewish texts or tradition." And I dare say, and beyond the Judaic community. So, Rabbi Garfinkel, there are just so many questions within those comments. It sounds like a wonderful book. I can't wait myself to read it. So, tell us, first of all, what inspired you to write this?
I have been writing Torah commentaries for more than 20 years. And the way that I got started in that was by being a counselor in a Jewish summer camp. And there they would read the Torah as part of the weekly religious services. and I saw that the kids were not being respectful. They were talking and fighting with one another, and at first I thought it was their problem, but then I realized that it was really the staff's problem, because they had nothing to look at in their hands. They had just the text of the Torah itself, and if you are not accustomed to Torah learning over the course of a number of years, that book can be very difficult to understand, especially for a teenager. So I set about writing commentaries that would be accessible to them. Over the course of time, I found that commentaries that are accessible to teenagers are actually the kind of commentaries that are accessible to everyone else as well. We all were teenagers, and we all appreciate a more open, simpler approach to things.
Perhaps I jumped ahead of the fact that we can't assume that everyone knows exactly what the Torah actually is.
The Torah is the original revelation of God to the Jewish people. It comprises the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, and the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible are also the first 5 books of the Christian Bible. In addition, it is a book that has had a foundational role in Western civilization. And I think that people who read it from any vantage point are going to find that it has something relevant to them. I'll give you an example. We all talk about a scapegoat. But what is a scapegoat after all? Well, a scapegoat comes from the Torah. There are so many ideas just in ordinary English that we don't even know that we're quoting Jewish texts. A lot of people don't know that when you say the writing is on the wall, that you're talking about the book of Daniel. So it's a book that has had a lot of relevance for people completely outside the role of religion. We're talking about the world of ideas here, and everybody has ideas.
Interesting. Can we go a little into the weeds about the Torah, the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible? Why 5 books, and why those? And first of all, which 5 books, and why those 5 books?
Those 5 books are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, I don't get a prize on Jeopardy for naming those, but those are the, chronologically speaking, those were the first ones, the first 5. From the standpoint of Jewish theology, we believe that those books came from God directly, whereas the writings of the prophets, that are also holy, of course, were inspired. The prophets wrote them, but they did so with divine inspiration. And then you have other books that we call the writings, such as the Proverbs and the Psalms. They are somewhat less holy than the prophets. They did not come from direct inspiration from God, but rather from the inspired heart of a human being that wrote them, such as King Solomon.
Okay. All right. So you've been teaching or studying. Well, you've been studying the Torah for a long time, but you've been writing about the Torah for, you say, what, 20 years now?
Yes.
And you started out with these books that are being used in your network of summer camps. What was the impetus for you to sort of jump out of that little insular community and decide you're going to put something out for the whole world to read?
So there are, as you noted, there are 54 Torah portions over the course of the year. In the summer camp environment, we only read about 10 or 12 of them. And so because of that, I was never able to write commentaries on the wide variety of other things, the other Torah portions. But I was often asked to do so. I was asked many, many times, when are you going to address the rest of the Torah? And finally, the Jewish Publication Society invited me to do exactly that.
Okay. And what sort of need is there perceived for a book like this? I guess it's a collection of essays, right?
Yes, it's a collection of, well, let's see, 54 times 4, well over 200 essays. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How did it, well, yeah, and so what is, I mean, this is just another way, not just another, but this is another way for Jewish people to get more involved in the Torah, to understand the Torah better?
One of the major commandments that Jews are supposed to follow is that we are supposed to study the Torah. Not just the Torah, but Torah without the word the. When you talk about Torah, but then there's the word Torah without the, and that means the entirety of Jewish wisdom. And so, yeah, exactly. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we consider all of it to be a form of Torah, whether it is a direct revelation from God or whether it is the inspired words of a rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
It is all considered the kind of material that we are supposed to study. A Jew, even if she is a shoemaker, is supposed to set aside time for the study of Torah. We don't make a distinction between those who should study and those who shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Again, as it had been written here in partial of your review, an eternally sacred text, wholly pertinent to our modern lives. So this crosses beyond just Judaism. As you said, there were phrases that we just take for granted that they're abundant in our English language, but their derivation has come from Torah. It's a way of living, and
yes, it is.
It embraces, as again says here, deep and substantive thought, delivering abundant food for thought. So it sounds meditative and contemplative and just very enriching.
I like to talk about the study of Torah as the antidote, the best antidote for what I think is a major problem in our society, which is that we are over notified. We have attention spans of about 3.5 seconds. And the reason is that a few seconds go by and it's another email, it's another voicemail, it's another text, it's another beep of another kind. Especially during the pandemic, that has been our experience. Mm-hmm. So, society is what it is. I'm not saying that we should give up on technology. It's brought us a lot of blessings, but there should be time every day to unplug and focus on spiritual matters, no matter what religion you are,
and reflect.
Yes,
right. So that life is not just about fear of missing out.
Yes, it's not just about getting more stuff, right?
It's just, it astounds me when I see people in restaurants and they're there with a number of people and everyone is here.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's relating.
Right.
Or I see young mothers walking with their children and maybe there's a dog going for the walk as well. And she's on the phone. She's not giving of herself. She's not engaging with her child or her dog. And that's such a missed opportunity. And I think if we can just focus inward a little bit and develop our own richness so that we're not lost in the technology that is so essential to our lives. And this seems to address it. Just tell us more.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I think I've got a bit of a backup. Oh, it's my voice. All right. I think that this book is relevant to is just as relevant to non-Jews as it is to Jews, because I really I made a consistent effort in all of these essays to talk about issues rather than rituals. The rituals, those are unique to the Jewish people, of course, but wherever possible, I strive to talk about ideas and issues that really cross our religious boundaries. For instance, there is there's a lengthy portion in Leviticus about how the high priest used to dress. Now, you might think that this would be something very sleepy and completely irrelevant to people living in the 21st century, but it actually touches upon an important idea, which is today's dress code. How should we dress today? And under what circumstances is it necessary to put on a tie, look presentable? And I bring up the issue of how Mark Zuckerberg once got his hat handed to him because he showed up in Congress in a hoodie. And the next time that he did that, the next time that he was invited to Congress, everyone noticed that he was in a fine suit.
Yes.
Because they told him
he was capable of.
Right.
Yes.
And I think he got the message that it doesn't matter that you're Mark Zuckerberg, you still have to put on a tie sometimes.
Right. Decorum.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of respect
Exactly.
to other people.
Right. And to the institution.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll give you another example. There's a Jewish teaching that I reference, which is that a Jewish leader, should always be rich, smart, and strong, which is kind of a controversial idea, because do we really want our leaders to only be the rich, the smart, and the strong? So I go through how there are different kinds of rich, there are different kinds of smart, and there are different kinds of strong. We're not necessarily talking about financial wealth, and we're not necessarily talking about physical strength. That you should have wealth of some kind, whether it's spiritual wealth or material or both, and strength could be in the form of talent rather in the form of your ability to bench press.
Interesting. These essays, excuse me. Well, first of all, how did you determine that you were going to do 4 essays on each portion of the Torah? Why 4?
In consultation with Rabbi Barry Schwartz, who is the editor-in-chief of the Jewish Publication Society, we decided together that there would be a consistent organization, because it creates a kind of rhythm. You know exactly where you are in each Torah portion as you read it. And so we thought about some of the basic foundations of Jewish identity, and those are our Torah, it's our homeland, the land of Israel, it's Jewish ideas, and it's the concept of the Jewish people, which lives in virtually every country on the planet.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And now, were these essays things that you had to do any kind of research with, or did you just draw on your years of learning?
Actually, every essay, every line of every essay required a tremendous amount of research, because what I learned was that when you write a book in the real professional world as opposed to the summer camp world, you can't just say stuff. You have to back it up. You have to show that what you're saying is actually logical, and not just the musings of the mind. And that is why it took from first contact to publication, it took 7 years. Now, it took 6 years. I turned in the final 6 years after I started, but in publishing, it takes a full year to get things on a printing press and get them typeset, etc. So,
now, did you anticipate it taking that long?
No, I didn't. But I had never been through a professional editing process, and my editor, Joy Weinberg at the Jewish Publication Society, in a sense, she taught me how to write. I didn't know how to write, or at least I thought I did, but she showed me that there is a way to write that I didn't know about, and that's writing with something called nuance. I was used to beating people over the head with my prose, sort of, making my points as if this were WWF, defeating the opponent. And she taught me that really, if you really want to engage people. You can't come in there like a wrestler. You have to come in there like a scholar and
Right.
and
Exactly.
and recognize that other people might be right.
Wow. Interesting.
That's a concept.
Just
Did that come hard? Did that come hard to you?
yes. Humility is a skill. It's if you're not born humble, and I don't think any baby is born humble. Babies are born selfish because if they weren't selfish, they'd die.
Exactly.
Humility is something that you have to learn, and we've not had great examples of humility in America for a very, very long time. So
That's for sure.
it is not unfortunately, it is not a trait that our culture promotes.
Embraces. Exactly. I know.
Yeah.
It's one must be number one. Number three is I'm interested in now people being classified as alphas or betas or high value or low value. And my gosh, what about inner value? What about thought processes and enrichment of philosophy and personal experience and just delving into that which makes us unique humans, unique individuals, and just how we can, well, as it's talked about here, illuminating how these four tenets of Jewish life are intersecting and enriching each other. And that's what I think that what I'm getting from this is what you've focused on, illuminating those four facets of the Torah, Israel, the Jewish people, and Jewish thought. I think if any of them is the most outreaching, it would be Jewish thought. Again, I don't know. So can you just expound on maybe one of your essays regarding Jewish thought and how it would be relevant outside the Jewish community?
I'll give you an example of Jewish thought, which is it comes from a post-biblical book of rabbinic wisdom known as Pirkei Avot. It's in the Mishnah, but that's neither here nor there right now. The teaching that I want to bring to your attention is this idea that there are good arguments, there are holy arguments, and there are bad arguments that serve no purpose. And I think I have an essay about that, explaining that idea. And it's something that's very relevant to American life because we have completely lost any notion that we once had, if we ever had it, that there are arguments that are worth having, and there are other arguments that are completely destructive to the moral fiber of our nation, that do nothing but polarize people rather than bring them together for a common goal. A good argument, according to that teaching, is one that brings people together to build the community, perhaps with slightly different details, but to come together and cooperate. A bad argument is one that creates polarization, where one side says, "I am 100% right and you are 0% right,"
or 100% wrong.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Can you give any examples of those three different kinds of arguments in modern life?
Sure. Well, I think that it's not so much examples as it is method at how you have the argument. So if you want to talk about economics, for instance, how do we deal with the poor in America? The way that we've been having this argument is to say that either you are a red-blooded American or you are a communist. And it is that's not a productive way to have the conversation. It is one that simply makes people run to their respective forts and not engage each other in the trade of ideas.
Exactly. Once one has been accused, one might retreat.
Yes. Yes.
I guess maybe I'm answering my own question, but are the tones of the essays within each book, are they informed by, I guess they're informed by what appears in that individual book, right? The different aspects or the different aspects of the different 5 different books? So in
Well,
other words,
yes, every essay is based on a particular verse from the Torah. I always start with one verse, or sometimes it's 2 verses because the English Bible and the Hebrew Bible sometimes number things differently.
Okay.
But I take a verse, and from there we go through the explanation, commentary, and conclusion. An important part of the book, I think, is that it ends with questions for thought, things that you can take to your, whether it's your Sabbath meal, or whether it's just to a discussion group, or to the classroom. It is, for us in our culture, questions are more important than answers. Answers tend to end a discussion, but a good question is always better than a good answer.
It engages more.
Yes.
Do you have any favorite aspects of the book?
My favorite aspects of the book, you mean other than all of it? I think
any one part of it that you really, really enjoyed writing more than the others?
I think there are individual essays that are some of my favorites. For instance, I really enjoyed describing Jewish wisdom as a turducken. Do you know what a turducken is?
Yeah.
Not a clue.
Okay, I do, but I'm really anxious to hear this one.
Okay, so for those of you, yes, maybe it's not a big thing in New Jersey, but a turducken is a festival of gluttony, and it is a duck. It's a roasted duck inside a roasted chicken, inside a roasted turkey. Turducken. Actually, I got the order wrong. The chicken is in the center. Turducken. So I was in one of my essays. I enjoyed describing Jewish wisdom as kind of a philosophical turducken. That is, it is a many-layered approach to wisdom. I think we
seems
froze.
to have disappeared.
Okay.
I don't know where he went. But that's it. Can you give us an example of that kind of layering in any one of the essays?
Sure. In all of the essays, we start with a biblical verse, which by definition is many thousands of years old, 2,500 to 3,500 years old, and from that one point, you get a very rich layering, century by century, of the different sources. And I take that layering to a later point than some other commentaries might. Some commentaries prefer to restrict their sources to the holy books, but there's an entire world of experience that is also a kind of Torah. So things that we have learned about life in the past 50 years are things that should be included in the study of an ancient book like this.
As an example.
Oh, as an example. So let's see if I can find a good one.
And I have to exit for about a minute. I have a little handicapped pup who is needing attention.
I kind of dropped off the face of the earth there for a couple seconds. I think.
You did.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Technology, folks.
Okay. Should I keep talking?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So there's an essay that really taught me something, which is about how to criticize others. That's an important skill to have, and it is one that very few people, I think, know how to do. And the in this essay, I quote the work of a major Fortune 500 executive who writes very persuasively that if you want to criticize someone, you have to have a good relationship with that person first. If you have a negative relationship with someone, then you are not the person who should be doing the criticizing. Because if you have a negative relationship with someone, it does not matter how much candy coating you put over the criticism, it will be rejected. Likewise, if you have a close, positive relationship with someone, that person is likely to accept even somewhat harsh criticism because they know that it's delivered from a place of love.
Interesting. And what where does that essay fall in terms of the books? I'm just wondering Go ahead.
Oh, I am actually not exactly sure where it is. One of the blessings of a book like this is that it is quite big, and I don't necessarily know. I can't quote my own book chapter and verse. How about that? So,
that's fine. Neither can I. I've got two of them, and I'd be hard pressed to tell you what occurs on what page. Yeah. So don't feel bad. I hate to make it be redundant. Well, yeah, I hate to make it be redundant, but I blacked out. My connection was lost just when you were talking about the turducken. So I didn't get to, because I really wanted to hear that analogy. So can you give me a thumbnail real quick?
Sure. I was simply saying that I compared Jewish wisdom to a turducken because just as a turducken is a layered experience of eating, the Torah in all of its forms is a layered experience of learning. You start with that which is very old, and you build out to things to sources that are more modern.
I see. Okay.
And they combine together.
That could take a lifetime.
Yes.
Wow. And do you think your learning is, have you finished learning, or you're still learning?
Was it? I think Charlton Heston once said about his gun that you'll tear it away from me from my cold dead hands. I would apply that idea to Torah learning. You stop learning when you're dead. So, and in fact, one beautiful description of heaven is that heaven is an academy of Torah. It is a place where you go to study with the creator of the universe. And moreover, for those who led a good holy life, that is heaven. For those who sinned, that is hell.
Oh, but it's the same thing.
Yes, it's the same experience for everyone.
You would think, though, that when you died,
whether you ascend or descend.
Yeah, you would think that when you died, though, you wouldn't have to go to school anymore, you know?
Well, we find school to be school is a taste of heaven. Just think about when you were in college. I mean, no responsibilities. As they say, youth is wasted on the young.
That's right. Absolutely.
We look back and we think, oh, what we could have done had we had the maturity to handle that freedom.
If I knew then what I know now.
Exactly. Speaking of generations, I know we weren't, but is this something that a younger generation can identify with, all of these essays?
I think that this would begin to be relevant to a smart worldly high schooler, but it would really become relevant to someone in college. I think I don't think I would. I don't think I would use this book to teach younger kids.
Well, outside of the Jewish community.
That you outside or inside.
Right. Well, then there is the study of the Torah when one prepares for the bar or the bat mitzvah, that they're 12, 13, yes?
Yes, and we teach Torah on a very elementary level,
Mm-hmm.
at least in my community and others like
Mhm.
ours. We teach it at a level that is accessible to the very young. Yes.
So they've had a jump start on the philosophy, basically, of living well, of being respectful, and within the tenets of the 4 principles of Judaism.
That is the goal.
Obviously are outreached.
That is
So
the goal.
you've got some really great reviews on your Amazon authors page here. Have people come to you? What kind of reaction are you getting from, face to face, if any?
During the pandemic, there's been very little face to face of any kind,
Of course.
but
That's true.
mask to mask. But the feedback I've gotten has been very, very positive, and I'm just I'm humbled by the praise that I hear.
Mhm.
Huh.
I think it'd be
Wow.
fun to have a book signing at the temple.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
I knew it.
Is this a book you could have written 10 years ago?
10 years ago,
That's a great question.
I think I could have done it 10 years ago, but it probably would have been a somewhat different book because in the 10 years that have gone by, my kids have gone from 7 to 17.
Wow.
They've gone from little children to just the dawn of adulthood.
Mhm.
So, and of course, that the process of being a parent during all those years changes who you are internally. So, if I had written it 10 years ago, that would be a very different person who was writing it.
Wow.
So how much of who you are and your situation at the time and society at large at the time, how much of all that contributed to the thought that went into these essays?
I think that when a writer of anything, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, when we sit down to write, we don't consciously put our own stories into it, but there must be an unconscious process
Exactly.
whereby the experiences that we have collected end up getting into the ink or into the computer.
Well, they're in nuance.
Yes, right.
Is there anything that's in the book now that the you of 10 years ago would have disagreed with?
Oh, very much so.
Really?
Very much so. Yes. I think that particularly on the issue of Israel and the Palestinians, I have developed a more nuanced approach to that. Now, I'm an unapologetic Zionist. I do believe that the Jews ought to have a homeland of their own in the land of Israel, but one has to have some nuance about that because there are other people who do live there, Palestinians namely, and that their rights should not be ignored.
And the you of 10 years ago.
Or
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying that the rights of Palestinians are not ignored, though there is a lot of progress that needs to happen.
Right. And what stance would the you of 10 years ago have had on that?
I think 10 years ago, I would have had for lack of a better term, a much more right-wing approach.
Interesting. So
one that lacked nuance.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting.
tolerance.
And now, what do you attribute that to? Do you attribute that to being a parent, or did you attribute that to just maturing over the past decade?
I think that I don't know if parenthood has anything to do with it, but certainly, maturing and learning to learn from other people, to learn that two people can disagree about that issue and still have a working relationship. There's a Muslim leader in town who he and I disagree on that issue, but that doesn't mean that we can't be friends and colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's something that is lost in America today. We think that people who disagree with us on issues that are dear to us, that they must be on the other side. They must be out of the room. And that's not true.
Right. Right.
You
Well,
know,
so
you're
the
agreeing
problem,
to disagree, and
yeah,
just even though your philosophies may be not identical, that there's a respect factor.
yeah, and also the problem has become over the past 4 or 5 years that politics has merged with moral issues. So you're not just talking politics anymore, you're talking morality. And the idea of, okay, well, that person's stance on, it's not like that person's stance on macroeconomics doesn't agree with mine, and but other than that, he's a good guy. There's a moral basis to these things. But I just wanted to explain that the reason I'm asking you that question is because you're becoming, with this book, you are inserting yourself as, or coming out to the world as a thought leader, as a philosopher. And it's important for people to know, what's behind the philosopher, what has informed the philosopher to come to these different ideas and these more than 200 essays. And that's why I'm intrigued by you saying that obviously everybody's a different person over the course of time, but how you take it, the old you would have taken a completely different stance on that particular issue as you have now. I find that interesting how people change and how minds work.
I do want to say I'm not a philosopher. A pilot is not necessarily an F-18 pilot. So the philosophers, those are our F-18 fighter pilots.
I get it. Well,
I fly a regional jet. So.
That's not. Let's call you then a thought leader.
Sure.
Yeah, I just find that that's very interesting.
Well,
so
carrying that
so
a step further, what happens in 5 years? Do you add more to the concept? Is there a second book that's planned?
I hope so.
Because you will indeed be another nuanced individual 5 years hence and 10 years hence.
It's supposed to work like that.
This year has taught us that there is nothing that is static anymore.
When I was writing the final draft and really starting to wrap it up, I was it was time. It really needed to be set off for production. That was in March of 2020.
Oh my! Wow.
And at the time, there are a couple of references to the pandemic, sort of not exactly. I don't make a big deal about it because at the time it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
We kind of thought at the time, you'll remember this, that this is going to pass a couple of weeks, and we'll be able to put this behind us. Famous last words. So
Right.
A year and a half later.
Yeah.
But it can't help but have changed a lot of what was already in the works. Just this year alone, that people have just had to go inward.
I think you could have a very good book of Torah that is, and I've read some already by others, that is about the Jewish reaction to the coronavirus, because it's really a human crisis of the sort that we haven't seen in over 100 years. Well, I suppose World War II was had a bigger change on the world than the pandemic, but it's going to be close. These are the kinds of things that we will tell our grandchildren. We lived through it.
Right.
Well, unlike World War II, and I didn't experience that philosophically, there was, from everything that I have read and learned, there was not that sort of division that this pandemic seemed to have brought forth, because it just revolved to a great degree around politics. And the division just was not there. When a world war was fought in this country, the country stood behind its position. And here there were just so many divisions and so much hatred that colored everything. This was just such a unique situation for all of us to be in. The people who you would never think would think X, not only thought X, but thought it to the 10th power. And a lot of friendships were lost. A lot of families have been at each other's throats. And this book seems to have the potential to be so much unification possible, that under the umbrella of these thoughts, there's some peace and cohesion.
It's Torah is meant to be a salve for our wounds. And
So
of course, any religious book, a religious book is like a knife. It can be used to cut bread, and it can be used to stab somebody. So, and that's true of all religious books. So, I strive to make books that really cannot be used to as a weapon, because that's not my goal.
Can
So
you
what
read
was
any
your goal?
passage of any of these essays?
Can I read a passage? Well,
just something that you are particularly proud of.
I can just see how thick that book is. Holy mackerel!
it's a
Wow,
It's a big
look
one.
at that.
In English, the word compromise can have a negative connotation. We speak of patients who have a compromised immune system or actions that compromise national security. In Hebrew, however, the modern and rabbinic word for compromise, pshara, has none of these unfavorable associations. I take this to mean that our tradition views compromise not as a necessary evil, but as a good strategy that should be pursued whenever possible. A well-known Talmudic teaching backs up this assertion. Quote, as it is taught, when the verse states in Deuteronomy, justice, justice you shall pursue, one mention of justice is stated with regard to judgment, and one is stated with regard to compromise. How so? Where there are two boats traveling on the river and they encounter each other, if both of them attempt to pass, both of them sink, as the river is not wide enough for both to pass. If they pass one after the other, both of them pass. And that idea of compromise is exactly, I think, something that needs to be developed in America, because I don't know if we ever had it, but we used to work together much more than we do now.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
principle
not
of
as
courtesy
polarized as
involved
we are now.
at that point too, and deference. That
Yes.
is just based on no, after you.
Sure.
Huh.
Yeah. So what would you like the effect of this book to be on the United States society, American society, or even the world?
Well, remember, we're talking about a Jewish book. We're not talking about a Stephen King novel. So I hope that lots of America sees it. I do realize that we're talking about a smaller audience, but when you're a teacher, you don't know what the consequences of your teaching will be. You could teach something, and I've had students come back 20, even 30 years later and remind me about something that I taught that meant something to them.
Mhm.
And it's that's when you know that you've had an effect. I hope that this will plant seeds. I may never see the trees, but I hope it will plant seeds.
Hey, listen, don't sell yourself short. I mean, this is Amazon. This is the age of interconnectivity, and in a blink of an eye. So you never know who's going to see this book and who's going to read it and who's going to say, "Wow, this is something else," and go on from there. So, what's
Pass
your
it
next
on,
book?
and so on,
A
and
nice
so on.
a nice pulp fiction book, or a hardcore detective, maybe?
Well, if I were to write a novel, it would be in the paranormal realm.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Your interest is in that.
yeah, Stephen King,
Uh-huh.
Dean Koontz, that kind of thing.
Oh,
okay.
very interesting.
Good
We have
escapist,
some
but
paranormal experiences we could share with you.
well, that's another story. That's another story.
Oh.
Well, let's see. This is where, folks, if you're interested in learning more about Rabbi Garfinkel's book, you can go to his website, www.eligarfinkel.com. That's ELIGARFINKEL.com. And there's a description and there's a link to buy it. The book is available on Amazon, as is everything in the world. And I understand, Rabbi, it's selling well.
Is it available also at the temple?
I don't have copies at the temple, but it is also available at jps.org, by the way. And there you get a 40% discount with the code that if it's not on the website, on my website, I'll put it there. So there is the publisher has a sale that Amazon does not offer.
Oh, great. Okay. I understand the book's selling well, yes?
Yes, it is.
Well, that's great. That's good. It's good to know that when you put 7 years into something, that it's being received well.
Yes, yes.
Right. That the
All right.
information is relevant and has the ability and the potential to change just one thought that can have such a ripple effect on so many.
Yeah. Well, I can say, Rabbi, we've covered a lot of events that you've appeared in, that you've spoken in, and I always look forward to hearing what you have to say, because I think you're a very thoughtful writer, and
speaker.
you have a way, and speaker, and you have a way of putting words together that it's going to sound silly, that makes sense, and that
inspires
really
reflection.
that capture and that capture mood. So I imagine this is 400 some odd pages of that same experience. So I'm actually looking forward to reading it. I haven't read a book in about 5 years, but I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, then I'm honored that this will be your return to reading.
Yes.
Right.
Or sanity.
All right, well, yeah, or sanity. Rabbi Eli Garfinkel, gee whiz, Eli Garfinkel. See, sometimes my mouth gets ahead of my brain.
Well, when you're reading it as one word, it's
kind of Eli
weird.
Garfinkel.
Right. Eli Garfinkel.
Well, anyways,
in Israel, it's a very common last name. It's like Smith. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I knew some Garfinkels in college, in fact. And there's some guy that was hooked up with a guy named Simon. They were pretty famous.
That was Funkel.
Oh, that was Funkel. Yeah. Maybe that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rabbi, thank you so much for coming on the News Hour with us and talking about your book. It was extremely interesting, and we wish you all the best luck.
And please let us know when the book signing is going to be.
I will do so. Thank you.
Oh,
maybe
definitely.
We'll
be there.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, that's Rabbi Eli Garfinkel of Temple Bethel here in Somerset, and his new book. And when I lost my connection, I lost the graphic.
The JPS Jewish Heritage Torah Commentary.
There we go, Torah Commentary. So if you're interested in reading further about the Torah, then give him a look. Rabbi, thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
We will see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
That was fun.
It is interesting. I have seen the rabbi interacting with so many other different cultures in our community, and it strikes me specifically when there were terrorist attacks within the Muslim community, that Rabbi Garfinkel stepped up, and there were services that were conducted in support and fundraising, as it was returned when there were Jewish worshipers gunned down in the middle of a service, and the Muslim community stepped up and sponsored fundraising and support. That we live in a very unique community, and it's the hand reaching and the respect that has gone on between so many cultures within this community that one would not expect could coexist. And he's been quite the leader.
Yeah, he's been quite the leader. And his association with Imam Rizvi of the Masjid Eli Mosque here in town has really been, to me, inspiring. That somebody from the Jewish faith and somebody from the Muslim faith could have a very good working relationship with each other, and I know
philosophical relationship, not just working. I mean, when terror happened and people were in mourning,
they didn't waste any time.
The communities stepped up for each other, and it was just such a blessing.
And you have to thank Alex Karazi,
absolutely,
who founded the Franklin Township Interfaith Council, of which both Imam and Rabbi are members. For that, because he really worked hard to, and he's been on the program as well. He really worked hard to bring that community together. When I say that community, the religious community, we have, gosh, what did we say, more than 70 different houses of worship in town, and
over 60 languages are spoken.
Yeah, maybe more to come.
Yeah.
But he is working very hard to bring that spiritual community together, so that and in times of anguish and fear, that's what a lot of people need. So, and I really am. I'm looking forward to reading the rabbi's book, because I really do like how he speaks. He's very good. So is Pastor. Oh boy, I'm going to mess his name up.
Pastor George.
Yes, Pastor George Montanari.
Yes.
Right, Montanari.
Yes.
I also look forward to him speaking, because he always he's got a very pleasant voice, first of all, but he always has good things to say. Not that other folks don't, but those are the two who stand out to me as being able to put words together that really hit me anyway.
They dig deep, right? Without being
they
condescending.
They dig deep, but you don't feel like they dug deep, but they did, because of the way what they say and the way they say it. So very nice. Yeah, we have a very unique situation here in Franklin Township in terms of houses of worship and spirituality
and culture. Yeah, it's been amazing.
So Franklin, there you have it. Go to Amazon, look up Rabbi Eli Garfinkel, and check out his book. The
name of it is the Torah Commentary, and it's produced by the Jewish Publication Society.
Right, and it's available both. It's available both as a hardcover, and as a Kindle ebook.
Oh, I want the hardcover.
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing this all day long. For leisure, I want to sit with the book and turn the real pages.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know.
Ooh. So
all right,
exciting.
Franklin.
It's exciting that he did it, that he had the heart to do it, and that his expression is now out for the universe.
7 years. That's a long time to devote to that sort of an enterprise. That's a very, and that is a scholarly work. I mean, that's 7 years of the guy's life and research and everything. That qualifies as scholarly work. So Franklin, if you want to learn about what's happening in town, go to the only independent news source in Franklin Township, only locally owned, totally independent news source in town. That's franklinreporter.com. If you would like to, now this is something that we always say, and I don't know, people sometimes have criticized us for it, but it's no secret that news business in this country and really around the world has suffered really since 2008. I saw a statistic the other day that newsrooms lost 57% of their employees between 2008 and 2020. That's hard. That's leaving news deserts in certain parts of the country, in certain parts of New Jersey even. And it's been shown that in where there is no local news source, there are no reporters peeking behind corners and looking in the dark closets, that things happen like taxes get raised, corruption flourishes because no one's watching them. So it's really important to support local news sites and local news organizations like ours. So you have a number of different ways you can support the Franklin Reporter. If you're a local business or you know of one, you can take out advertising, both on the franklinreporter.com website, in our morning report newsletter, in our monthly digest newspaper, or even sponsorship of a program like this, the News Hour, or one of our many live streams that we do. And to get more information about advertising, you would contact PJ Parker at ads@franklinreporter.com.
Or you may leave a text message at 732-820-0840.
Yes, you may do that as well. If
And
you have
it's one thing to speak about the support of to keep a family of publications like this around, but when you are looking to see what is going on in your community, from education to how your dollars are being spent, to government, to the excellence and the achievements within our schools, I would venture to say that most people will point and say, they're at everything. How do they do it? There's just two of them. And sometimes we don't know how we do it. And sometimes it is boiling hot sun under a graduation ceremony, or it's just somebody doing a tap dance on the stage in the middle school. But we're out there, Franklin, because Franklin's our home too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
this is a community unlike no other. And I know personally, I'm so happy to be a part of it and have the ability to provide the transparency that we are providing for this community. And that's where you as an advertiser can benefit, because this community is thriving for news about itself and its neighbors and its children and its progress. And you can certainly benefit from that enthusiasm.
Okay. And as PJ said in the beginning of the program, you can also subscribe, $37 a year. To subscribe, just go to the website, franklinreporter.com. If you have a tip on news, or if you want to just have a comment, a letter to the editor, you can address those to me at editor@franklinreporter.com. You can also find us on the Twitter. Franklin Editor is our handle. You can find us on the Facebook, where you're probably watching us right now. And we are also on Instagram under this very laborious handle. Maybe TikTok. I don't know. I tried it. I'm not sure if it's going to work. But
well, that's something that we should maybe we should ask our Franklin audience. Would you like to see us on TikTok?
Yes. Would you like to see us on TikTok doing TikTok-y things?
Well, I'm not sure about that.
No dancing. There will be no twerking. I've seen some really strange stuff. I got to tell you.
We have to define what TikToking is in the context.
I worry about society with some of the things I've seen on TikTok, but
oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I hear the kids love it. So there you have it.
To be socially relevant, there are as many social platforms as we can populate with what we have to say. We're out there.
We're out there. All right, Franklin. Thank you so much for tuning in to the July 21st edition of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour. I'm Bill Bowman, editor and co-publisher, and as usual, Franklin, until we meet again, stay safe. PJ, say that thing that you say.
And and we will be back.